Is the Earth really spinning on its own axis around the sun? Are we really on this terrestrial convex ball going anywhere from a few hundred miles per hour to 1,000 miles per hour around the axis of the Earth? Is this really the truth? Or have we been duped into believing something that's actually incorrect? Yes, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is one of those idiots who thinks he knows the Earth is flat, or that we're not on a spinning ball. We're on the inside of a spinning ball, or maybe we're geocentric rather than heliocentric. Maybe Copernicus was wrong. Maybe Carl Sagan was wrong about that pale blue dot. Well, actually, we do have scientific proof that Carl Sagan, his main premise was incorrect, and that Copernicus' main premise was incorrect. We actually have scientific proof already that they were both wrong in their main premise, that we were just in some random spot in the universe. With the WMAP findings from the satellite WMAP and from the Planck satellite, the cosmic background radiation has been mapped out to show that we are actually in the center of the universe. This has already been confirmed. Yet, of course, they don't want you to really know that, so they still explain it away. We have to explain anything away that doesn't fit the standard thing taught in school. That you are on a convex ball spinning through the galaxy. You're just a pale blue dot, insignificant and irrelevant. Of course, perhaps they are trying to say there is no God. Maybe that's what they want you to believe. But is that really what's going on here? Or is it we really don't have scientific proof? Even of the simplest thing as the Earth spinning on its own axis, or spinning around the sun. Maybe you haven't been told about all the experiments, Michelson-Morley experiment, the Early's failure, and many other experiments that actually failed to detect the Earth's rotation. And that the special theory of relativity was concocted to explain away these inconsistencies. Here we are at Geek Central, physics.stackexchange.com. All right. Proof that the Earth rotates. What is the proof without leaving Earth and involving only basic physics that the Earth rotates on its axis? By basic physics, I mean the physics that the early physicists must have used to deduce that it rotates, not relativity. Of course, I was going to do a video on the special theory of relativity and how it actually is illogical. By the way, I have a background in mechanical engineering. I did quite a bit of studies in physics and mathematics and a lot of different topics. Aced all my calculus courses and physics courses, so I might know a little bit about this. And I think the special theory of relativity is actually bullshit because of a couple simple things. They try to say that the speed of light is constant, okay, within a vacuum. Now this is an assumption, and we actually don't have any proof of this. And it doesn't make logical sense either if you think about it for a little while. If you were going half the speed of light and you had a flashlight in your hand and you turned the flashlight on and pointed it the same direction that you're going, would the speed of light be only half the speed of light from the light source? What do we have as a reference point? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so in other words, if you're going, if somebody's in a stationary position watching a person go half the speed of light, and that person is observing the other one, and the person going half the speed of light turns on a flashlight pointing the same direction he is going, according to the special theory of relativity, the light coming from the flashlight would only go half the speed of light. Okay, so the person watching it, observing it from the outside, would see the light come out only the speed of light. Okay, so, but wouldn't it make more sense that if you shot, like for instance, a gun while you're on a train, and assuming there was a vacuum, and you shot it forward the same direction that the train is going, that it would actually be irrelevant to the speed in which it's shot? Of course, they just explain this all away, and it's used to explain away the problem of these experiments not being able to prove that the Earth is actually spinning around the sun. Okay, so these guys say, okay, what are some answers to this here? What is the proof without leaving the Earth involving only basic physics that the Earth rotates on its axis? Okay, so I don't like this. I don't even know what this guy's talking about here. He's not really saying anything. The apparent retrograde motion of the planets as observed from Earth was puzzling. In order to resolve motions into logical patterns, it was necessary to consider the Earth both moving in orbit and about its axis. Actually, this is one way you can explain what you see with the motion of the planets. You could also use things that have to do with ellipses that go close and far, with patterns of magnetism and things of that nature, electromagnetism. And I've seen other models that actually explain it as well, other than us moving through the galaxy. And, you know, this would only be a cursory evidence, which wouldn't really be proof positive that we are spinning or anything of the sort. It would just be two different ways to explain the same data, and one being potentially right or both being wrong. Okay, here we go. What is this guy saying? Okay, true proof exists only in math. In the real world, you cannot be 100% sure of anything. Whatever. Okay, that's a stupid answer. This is an effect on Earth by its own rotation I have heard of. The circumference over the Earth along its equator is larger than any circumference measured crossing north-south pole. What does that have to do with anything? Okay, that's not an answer to anything. Foucault pendulum. Okay, this one actually is not an answer. People think it is, but it's not. And actually, it does have an interesting pattern, but see, this can also be explained by ether. See, the idea or the concept that we were actually living inside a ball rather than on the outside of a ball. See, we are supposedly or allegedly living on the outside of a ball, but what if instead we're on the inside of a ball, a hollow ball, and we're on the inside? If we are inside a ball, then the universe would be inside the ball as well. And what if instead of the Earth moving, it's the ether or the sky moving? And if the sky is moving and it has an effect on things on planet Earth in the same way that we think, the rotation of the Earth would have effect on things, then it would make sense the Foucault pendulum would do this. But what's interesting, the one proof that sort of puts a hole in the whole heliocentric model, claiming that the Foucault pendulum proves that we're on a rotating ball, is the fact that whenever there's a lunar equinox, the Foucault pendulum actually changes directions and actually does not behave as it's supposed to. So why would that occur? If there's a lunar equinox, why would it interrupt this in any way, shape, or form? It should not. Assuming the heliocentric model, assuming we're on a convex ball, assuming that we're rotating around the sun, the Foucault pendulum should have zero effect from a lunar eclipse. However, if we're on the inside of a ball and the sun and moon are actually not so far away from us, we're on the inside of the ball and the sun and the moon would be inside the Earth, then at a lunar eclipse you could actually imagine how that might have an effect on the ether itself. Okay, so that's one little issue with the Foucault pendulum proof. Okay, and this guy's talking about it here. Coriolis effect, again, can be... All these things can be explained by the ether. This is what people don't understand. It can be explained in more than one way. And of course, oh, but what about leaving the Earth? What about NASA flying and going all these different places and exploring new worlds and civilizations? Well, actually, NASA's known to fake shit, so I don't exactly trust NASA. Let's just put it that way. They've been known to fake things. It wouldn't be too surprising if quite a bit of what they do is fake and fantasy to basically hold up this viewpoint. Because why would NASA want to hold up something that's incorrect? Well, if we were actually on the inside of a ball, you would know someone created this ball that we're inside of. If the whole universe is inside a ball, it's almost as if we're in a fishbowl and someone's watching us. Yeah, it's a little different than being on the outside of a ball and having an infinitely huge universe outside of us and having a number of galaxies around us. What if all that is bullshit? I just did a video on the Hubble Space Telescope and how there's actually programs within the Hubble Space Telescope not accounting the manipulation of photos they take, which I clearly demonstrate in the video as well. Okay, so what else? I didn't even read this, by the way. I'm just going off the fly here. Precession, slow variations, and axial tilt. None of this stuff actually proves anything. See, if you take ether into consideration, it can explain everything here as well. Nikola Tesla believed in ether. He actually thought the theory of relativity was a bunch of hogwash. He thought it was a bunch of bullshit. Literally. I mean, let me go find a quote here from Nikola Tesla regarding Einstein's theory of relativity. Okay, I found the quote here. Nikola Tesla. And it's right here. Einstein's relativity work is a magnificent mathematical garb which fascinates, dazzles, and makes people blind to its underlying errors. The theory is like a beggar clothed in purple, whom ignorant people take for a king. Its exponents are brilliant men, but they are metaphysicists rather than scientists. Okay, now he said some other really interesting things. I kind of wanted to go over a couple things here. At the age of 81, Tesla challenged Einstein's theory of relativity, announcing that he was working on a dynamic theory of gravity that would do away with the calculation of space curvature. The theory was never published, but a similar theory involving gravity waves, developed in the mid-1990s, is used to study of plasma cosmology, which is another thing that I find to be very interesting. It's the understanding of us being in an electric universe, which I think is what is the case regarding our universe, but I think it's actually inside of a concave ball rather than a convex ball. And I know a lot of the plasma theorists, they probably work mostly off a heliocentric model and explain how things move and how patterns show up in space via plasma. However, I think that's on a macro level. You can also explain it the same way on a less of a macro level with a concave Earth. Okay. And let's see here. You can see that they had sort of a fight between these two men. I think Tesla was correct. I think Einstein was not nearly as smart as Tesla. Of course, Einstein helped or aided in explaining away all the problems with the heliocentric model. That's why they love Einstein so much. That's why he's so brilliant. Notable heliocentrist experiments that failed to detect any movement of the Earth around the Sun. Scientific experiments that never detected any movement. Of course, there is one experiment that appeared to show some sort of rotation on its own axis, the Earth. However, it could also again be explained by ether. Most scientists know about the Michelson-Morley experiment that failed to detect any movement of the Earth around the Sun. This had to be overcome. So Fitzgerald Lorentz, shortening of the apparatus was proposed, and eventually the paradoxical theory of relativity was invented by Einstein to overcome this problem. However, there are 3 other experiments that have been deliberately ignored by universities because they support geocentricity. Michelson-Gale experiment. This detected that ether passing the surface of the Earth with accuracy of 2% the speed of the daily rotation of the Earth. In other words, it detected some sort of rotation, whether it's the Earth rotating on its own axis, or the sky above the Earth rotating, or the sky within the Earth rotating, as I actually look at it. Airy's failure. Telescopes have to be very slightly tilted to get starlight going down the axis of the tube because of Earth's speed around the sun. Airlie filled a telescope with water that greatly slowed down the speed of light inside the telescope and found that he did not have to change the angle of the telescope. This showed that the starlight was already coming in at the correct angle, so that no change was needed. This demonstrated that it was the stars moving relative to a stationary Earth and not the fast-orbiting Earth moving relative to a comparatively stationary stars. If it was a telescope moving, he would have had to change the angle. Now I'm going to show you a video explaining or actually showing this out so you can understand, because it's very clear once you look at the experiment that there's something really wrong here. That in reality, we aren't spinning. The sky is spinning.
In 1729, Bradley found that he had to tip his telescope forward very slightly to get a star in the center of his telescope. It was assumed that this was due to the motion of the Earth around the Sun. Let us assume that the telescope was moving at 5 miles an hour and had to be tipped 5 degrees. This 5-degree tipping, however, could equally be caused by the ether moving at 5 miles an hour, carrying the stars around the Earth. As we see here, the light would be coming in at the same angle, and the telescope would still have to be tipped 5 degrees. So tipping the telescope does not tell us whether it is the starlight moving or the telescope moving. However, there is a simple experiment that can determine whether it was the Earth that was moving or the ether and starlight. All that you had to do was record the tipping required for any particular star, then fill the telescope with water, which greatly slows down the speed of light in the telescope. So here is the moving telescope filled with water, tipped at 5 degrees, and you can see that the starlight does not now reach the eyepiece at the bottom. This is because the starlight moves much more slowly when passing through water. However, if the telescope is tipped further, say 10 degrees, then the starlight will then be visible again in the eyepiece. It has to be tipped further because the light is now slower when in the telescope. But if the starlight is going past the telescope at 5 miles an hour, then when it is filled with water, no further tipping is needed because the light is coming in at 5 degrees anyway. The starlight stays on the same path but is only travelling slower in the water. To recap, if it is the telescope that is moving, then when it is filled with water, it has to be tipped further to see the star. If the telescope is stationary and the starlight drifting past us, then it does not have to be tipped further. In 1871, George Biddle Airy, the Astronomer Royal, performed this experiment. This is a copy from his original report. You can see that the two readings are virtually identical. If it had been the telescope that was moving, Airy expected a figure of 30 seconds of arc. In fact, he only managed to read 0.8 seconds of arc difference. Bradley first discovered stellar aberration, and it is interesting that in his report, Airy mentions that it was now about 100 seconds of arc, and that it was still slowly diminishing. This indicates that the speed of light was still decreasing in measurable amounts when Airy performed his experiment in 1871. The result of Airy's experiment, known as Airy's failure, was that the telescope does not have to be tipped further. This proved that it was the incoming light that was moving past a stationary telescope fixed to the stationary Earth.
So you can see here that in actuality, what we have is scientific proof that the Earth is not moving, but rather the heavens or the ether is rotating within the Earth or on the outside of the Earth, which sort of presents a problem. Of course, the way they explain away these inconsistencies is with the special theory of relativity. So instead of actually having scientific proof that the Earth is rotating around the Sun, that the Earth is spinning on its own axis, instead they explained away why scientific experiments showed the Earth wasn't spinning by coming up with a special theory of relativity, which, as I've indicated, isn't even logical. However, the scientific community wanted to uphold this heliocentric model to avoid it going into obscurity and dying a slow and painful death. They propped up Einstein as a genius, and of course Nikola Tesla instead went into obscurity because he didn't fit their plans to espouse this current paradigm. Of course, NASA doesn't have any problem with backing up this current paradigm with their faked imagery and video, which I've shown in numerous videos now. I've debunked various things that they've done, whether it be the moon landings or the alleged people in the ISS. I think the ISS actually does exist, the International Space Station, but I don't think anybody actually lives in it. I think it's uninhabitable the way it is currently. And I think they foobarred it, basically. I think they tried to make it, and it basically ended up failing. And now they just fake footage from it. And they'll hairspray a woman's hair up. I'll show you a picture. Here's a picture of one of the women that was supposedly on the International Space Station with her hair looking like Medusa. If you ever actually watch some of the video footage from this supposed ISS, you'll find out that the women's hair is basically hairsprayed up to make it appear as if they're in zero gravity. But then if you actually go look at women who are in zero gravity, or at least manufactured zero gravity, if you do a parabolic with a plane, you get a short period of time in which you can feel, in essence, like you're in zero gravity. If you ever look at some of the women who go on those, their hair never looks like this. And when these women, their hair, when they're moving their head, their hair actually always oscillates back to the standing position, which doesn't make sense. Let me show you. Here we go, one of my old videos. Watch her hair. See how it oscillates back to where it's at? It's clearly hairsprayed up. It's a joke. Here is a video that a concave earther named Stephen Christopher made. Check this out. This is sort of what the concave Earth would be. Okay, you're on inside of the ball. This is how you could actually go around the Earth, but you're not on the outside of the Earth. If light bends, then you don't notice this, that you're actually inside something, because the light bends your perception. And you think you see a horizon line, but you're actually looking through an angular light. See how the light rays are bent when it goes around there? And this is how some of the planetal orbits. You see the light? See how it's bent? And actually I've done a video showing that light bends. So you get kind of an idea of what it would look on the inside of this ball. And that there's actually sort of like a glass-like dome 100 kilometers up, the Kármán line, with inside this concave Earth. Let me show you something that reveals this from the International Space Station. Okay, you're going to see it here. Okay, you see this line here? This is the Kármán line. This is where the ionosphere delineates from our atmosphere, and you can see interesting lightning flashes there, but this is at nighttime. You see how this line is. This is the Kármán line. Now, they're using a panoramic camera here that actually bends the Earth because it's panoramic. Now, if they used a normal camera in space, this would be flat looking. Okay? And you can actually see this on amateur videos. Just go check out some amateur high altitude balloon videos where they send up a camera with a high altitude balloon. You'll notice that the horizon line remains flat even up as high as 100,000 feet in the middle of the screen at eye level flat, which is impossible if we're on a convex ball. And so this is actually straight. And the reason why it looks straight and rather than curving up if we're inside a ball is because the light is bending. And it makes it appear like a straight line no matter where you're at. Okay, it's kind of an intriguing concept, but once you understand light is bending, then it makes sense. So as we read in 1 Timothy 6:20, O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoid profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely so called. And actually, it's the term knowledge or gnosis in the Greek. You can see it over here. It'll pop up. Gnosis. Knowledge. Now, it's actually referring to the Gnostics, which were the actual main enemies of the Christian faith. They denied that Christ came in the flesh because they believed the flesh was evil, created by an evil god called the Demiurge, and the spirit god Logos would be Christ, but they didn't believe the Logos could be in the flesh because the flesh is evil, made by the Demiurge. And this also goes with the yin-yang and a lot of concepts like this, and actually the Illuminati and the Freemasons with their checkered floors, white and black, black being evil, white being good, It's something that goes throughout society in secret, and it actually does relate to what people call science today. Science falsely so called, because as you can see, it's not really science. When you've done scientific experiments that actually prove something, then you're doing science. But if you're actually explaining away scientific experiments to retain your paradigm, which is what they've done, then you're not dealing with science, but science so-called, falsely so-called, fake science. And that's what we're dealing with here. Even the Apostle Paul is telling you is warning you to avoid it. But of course, most people are deceived, and they're not willing to think a little bit to see if there really is some lies being taught to us.